What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we are going to be talking about not only the Lions pass rush and their defensive line, but also some free agents that are available that the Lions may be interested in. Let's get it started. So I decided to combine the two things together. I see a lot of people talking about and really worried about that pass rush, and there's also some people that want to know about free agents that Detroit Lions could potentially bring in to kind of bolster that pass rush. And I'm going to be talking about what we look like now when it comes to getting pass rush, what our defensive line looks like, what the jack roll looks like, and what my expectations are, and then a couple of free agents that Detroit Lions could potentially look to target. So let's get this thing started. Now, I'm excited for this one because last season was a complete, total letdown when it came to a lot of our defensive linemen, right? We had a lot of veterans like Snacks Harrison, Mike Daniels, who completely did not live up to the hype. I mean, Mike Daniels, we brought in right before the season started, basically, and he did not pan out at all. We know Snacks Harrison was a guy that was just coming off one of his best seasons, and he just completely fell flat with the Detroit Lions. And we know when he was balling out, everybody looked better because we were a top 10 defense when Snacks Harrison was at his best. He was not at his best last season. So those two guys definitely hurt. A'Shawn Robinson had arguably the worst season of his career as well, a former second-round pick. Overall, it was just pretty bad. I mean, we had injuries then on top of that with Deshaun Hand down, Austin Bryant down. I mean, my goodness, it was injuries and then letdowns. And that's why our defense looked so bad. We weren't able to get any kind of pressure. We didn't blitz very much last season either, so that didn't help too much. Also, our cornerbacks weren't able to, benefit from any of that. We had a lot of unproven guys in the secondary. It was just a mess. Defensively, it was an absolute mess. And our offense, they held up their end of the bargain, averaging 25.5 points per game until Stafford went down. And once all that combined, it was just an awful experience. And we lost every single game in the second half of the season. Yikes. We ended up being 3-12-1 and getting the third pick in the draft. And we know we used that to get the top corner in the draft, and that is Jeffrey Okudah. But because of that, and when you look back on the Lions draft, you say, okay, this draft was exciting. You got top corner, you got a great running back. But what did you do to bolster the pass rush? And I think a lot of people simply look at names and they're like, what are we doing? We did not do anything to bolster the pass rush. But I'm here to tell you that the Lions got a lot better defensively. Maybe they're not finished, but they got a lot better, and I'm going to explain why. So like I said, Snacks Harrison and A'Shawn had very bad last seasons. Damon Harrison in 2018 was rated a 92 overall when just being a defensive lineman. And in 2008 and in 2019, he was given a 63.2 overall grade. He just dropped off completely. When it came to combined tackles, he dropped off. When it came to getting pressure, he dropped off. He wasn't the same run stopper. He was contemplating retirement. It was bad last season for Snacks Harrison, and that's where this defense starts. It's clear. The defense that Matt Patricia runs, it really starts on that interior defensive line, because if you're not going to blitz a lot, you need those down linemen to give you some kind of pressure. Now Matt Patricia wants to build secondary out. That's why people talk how they build it differently, Patriot way, they build it backwards. It's because they want that defensive line to get a lot of pressure, and they want top cornerbacks to hold it down, right? We didn't have that last season. We had unproven cornerbacks, and we had guys on the defensive line that weren't getting pressure, right? It was just an absolute mess last season. So, we had Amani, which came in at the end of the year, and he played really well. We had Darius Slay, who won it out of Detroit. That was a mess. We had Justin Coleman in his first year, who started off well and then struggled, really, I think, because of the pass rushing struggles. We had Rashawn Melvin, who was okay as a veteran corner, but overall, man, it was a mess. We had a lot of unproven safeties who were kind of thrown into the fire after trading away Quandre Diggs, and we had to improve that this offseason, and so far, in my opinion, we definitely did, and I think some people don't realize how much better we actually got. So like I said, Snacks Harrison, complete drop-off. A'Shawn Robinson was awful. He went from an 89 overall grade to a 56 overall grade. He was just bad. A'Shawn Robinson, I feel like, never really lived up to the second-round hype, and it was unfortunate because we need those guys. We need those guys to step up. So the Detroit Lions said, scrap it all, forget it. We are making changes. Martha Ford puts out an open letter saying, hey, we expect to be a playoff contender. And Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn said, all right, we need to make some changes then, because where we are now is not good enough to keep our jobs, and we want to keep our jobs. And I want to see them keep their jobs, but they need to figure things out, and that's exactly what they did. They said, forget it. We're moving on from Snacks. We're moving on from Mike Daniels. We're moving on from A'Shawn. We're cutting Devon Kennard, and they're making these big moves, and it's all exciting because, there's potential for the Lions to fill out a lot of things, but wait. They need to find players to do it. Okay, they got to find a way to fix this. So the defensive tackle position was pretty much gone. We really didn't have any defensive tackles at all. We had some defensive line depth of a lot of unproven players. We had Austin Bryant. Now he's going into his second year. We have Deshaun Hand, who when we've seen him at glimpses, very young. He looks so good, but we haven't seen him play that way because he's always been hurt. We had Romeo Okwara, who just took a complete drop-off because of the defensive line play in the interior was so bad. It all starts in the interior on this defensive line, on this defensive scheme for Matt Patricia. And last season, that's really what it came down to. The focal point for me was the interior defensive line was so bad that it really helped the no one out, and it just kept dominoing effect back to the rest of the defense, and it made us look really, really terrible. And we know we had historically defensive bad last season. Defensively, we were just awful last season. So Detroit Lions got rid of those guys, and they brought in some new faces. The first guy they brought in was Shelton, who, yes, did not sign a huge contract, 2 years, $8 million, which I have said is an absolute steal. I gave them an A+ for that signing. Because this guy that's 26 years old from the New England Patriots, he's going to fit into the scheme. He knows what he's asked to do. And he's coming off the best season of his career. This guy can absolutely hold it down in the interior. And I think because of that small contract, people think of it and say, oh, yeah, it's just an okay signing. But if you really think for a second, if this was a 4-year, $50 million deal, I think a lot of people would be saying, wow, we got a young player that held it down in New England. He can fit in perfectly. This is a great signing. But since he was 2 years, $8 million, people look at it and say, yep, you know what? It's a cheap deal. He's just a solid rotational piece. But he's not. The Lions actually got a beast here that is coming off of a grade higher than Damon Harrison, higher than Ashawn Robinson, a 70 overall grade. Again, he's 26 years old, coming off of his best season statistically. 65.4 against the run, a 73.3 in pass rush. This dude was very good last season. Now, I don't think he was Snacks Harrison peak. He's definitely not that yet. Snacks Harrison was one of the top interior defenders, but you had to replace him somehow, and they got a guy that can fit in day one with everything going on that can help out day number one. So that's huge. That is absolutely huge, and I think he will continue to get better, being only 26 years old. So he's gone, all right? So you're bringing Danny Shelton, awesome. Now, what else do we do? Well, you moved on from Ashawn and Mike Daniels. You need some more depth. We bring in a guy named Nick Williams, who, again, is coming off the best season of his career. 6 sacks for the Chicago Bears in that interior. Finally gets an opportunity to shine, and boy, does he shine. 6 sacks. He grades out higher than both Damon Harrison and Ashawn Robinson, and he has some depth. Now, this is a guy that, again, you could say is a rotational piece. I think that's fair because he's only had one really good year, and that was last season. Before that, really never had an opportunity. But, as we know, if we get that production, oh my gosh, we got a beast. But we got a guy that's kind of unproven, but we know he's coming off a good year on a cheaper contract, so that's solid. So, again, we replace him with a solid player. But the Detroit Lions, then in the draft, had to address some things. Now, defensive end, the Detroit Lions, they kind of didn't really address it, right? They didn't really address defensive end in free agency. They addressed defensive tackle, they fixed that. But the Lions, in my eyes, are really hoping that these defensive ends with interior defensive linemen, which we saw when Romeo Okwara had interior defensive linemen like Snacks balling out. Romeo Okwara looked like one of the top steals ever because, the Giants just released him for nothing. We brought him in, he looked super good. We know Deshaun Ham, when he was healthy, he looked super good. Austin Bryant was really good in college. He fell because of an injury. These are potential players that we just haven't got to see yet, and they could live up to that potential. Even if they live up to some of the potential, our defense is going to be a lot better, and we have tons of depth already at the defensive end position. So what the Lions do next, they released Devon Kennard. Now, this was a huge surprise. Devon Kennard, I was like, what are we doing? We didn't get a trade out of this. What kind of move was this? Nope, we just released him and saved the cap space. So the Lions had a big hole to fill there. And Devon Kennard was a jack role for us. He wasn't a guy that could drop back into coverage. He simply was to get pressure. So the Lions went to the draft and got a guy named Julian Okwara. Now, I don't want to break down Julian Okwara too much, but I will say this. This is a guy that is a pure pass rusher at this point. One of the top pass rushers in this year's draft, with his downside being stopping the run. That is exactly what Julian Okwara is. The downside is stopping the run. Now, I think he does improve, with some help. But that's his downside, right? He doesn't stop the run very well, but he is a pure pass rusher, which is basically what Devon Kennard was, as Devon Kennard never dropped into coverage, right? That's what he did. He just went to go get the quarterback. And that's exactly what Julian Okwara did. Over a 90 grade when it comes to pass rush. This dude was an absolute beast in college. He had an injury, I guess, which held him back from having even better statistics. This guy was directed to go round 1 or 2. He fell in the 3rd round to the Detroit Lions. This was an absolute great pick, with one of the 3rd round picks. So the Lions replaced Devon Kennard with a younger player that is going to be pairing up with his brother that has great production in college. He's just not very good against the run, right? That's the big concern. But again, that's what the linebackers are now for. So you're probably thinking to yourself, oh goodness, right, we got all these pass rushers, but what do we have to stop the run? That's exactly what the linebacker group is for. The Lions did not go and get guys that can help in coverage. No, they got guys that are run stoppers, that are known to be run stuffers. We got a guy out of Alabama named Reggie Ragland who's a run stopper. We got Jared Davis, who has been a run stopper. We have Jelani Tavai, who's a run stopper that can help in coverage a little bit. But now you need a linebacker that can cover. Oh, well, then you got Jamie Collins, the 30-year-old veteran veteran who is one of the better coverage linebackers in the NFL. Again, a New England Patriot who will fit this scheme right away. Detroit Lions made some major upgrades, just not exactly how we expected it to be. And when you look across the board, the Detroit Lions have potential to be really, really good. Let me just show you what I'm projecting this defense is going to be looking like. In its base formation, its nickel formation, 3 down linemen, this is what I think that this defense looks like. You have at one of your defensive end positions, Trey Flowers, who was an absolute monster last season. When he got it going, he got it going. This is your big $90 million man that is an absolute beast that just needs some help, and that's Trey Flowers, right? Young guy locked up for multiple years. Then you move next to him, you got the defensive tackle, Danny Shelton, who is a starter material defensive lineman. Again, defensive lineman to Danny Shelton here, who's young, who is here for 2 years, and he's going to be able to help out. He's graded out higher than both Ashawn and Snacks Harrison, and I think his ceiling is higher as he's young, and he's starting to learn things when Snacks Harrison is kind of starting to just fall off. And then at the other end position, you have either Quora, you have Deshaun Hand, or Austin Bryant, whichever guy steps up to that role. But then at defensive line, not only do you have Nick Williams behind Danny Shelton, you also brought in a guy named John Pennicini, who people are just writing off to be just a depth signing, but I'm telling you, John Pennicini is a monster. This dude, I ranked number 10 on my defensive lineman for a reason. He's a very, very good run stopper. So the Lions got a run stopper as a backup, and they also brought Jayshon Cornell, who I don't know tons about, so I'm not going to talk about him too much yet. But the Lions overall, they fixed the defensive line. They got young guys that can help right away. They got players that are better. They brought Julian Okwara in, who has a higher ceiling than what Devon Kennard had. And then you look at the rest of the defense, all right? You have a guy in Jamie Collins who can help in pass coverage. You have a guy in Jelani Tavai who was good last season, who's coming into his second year. He should be more experienced. You have Jared Davis, who really hasn't lived up to it. He's on a big year for him. This is make or break year. All right, that's what your 3 linebackers look like. Then you have Desmond Trufant on one corner, who is a proven 29-year-old cornerback that's signed for 2 years. Then you got Jeffrey Okudah, the number 3 pick in the draft. You have Jeffrey Okudah. Then behind him, you have Amani Oruwariye, who looked like our best cornerback when he actually started at the end of the season. Then you have Justin Coleman, who is probably, I think he's still the highest paid slot cornerback in the NFL for a reason, because when he is at slot, he's very, very good. At the safety position, you brought in Deron Harmon, another experienced player who can help in coverage, who's made some very big plays, who's known as the closer. You have Tracy Walker going into his 3rd year. You have Will Harris for depth. Overall, this defense just got a huge upgrade, and they got a lot younger. That's exactly what we did, but we didn't do it in the old-fashioned, get defensive end ways. Now, if the Lions do want to improve their defensive line and they want to get some other guys that can help out there are definitely some options. The first guy named Everson Griffin, who's 32 years old, who has had production, 8 sacks. This guy's age may concern you, but he's going to come on a short-term deal for somebody. He's still not been picked up. I think he could be a 1-year, $4 or $5 million deal. The Lions have the money to do it, and they can add him to this defensive line if they're still concerned with some of the injuries between Austin Bryant, between Romeo Okwara, between, those guys, between Deshaun Hand. If they want to make sure they have a guy that's proven production, that could be Everson Griffin. Another option you could have not named Everson Griffin is Jabal Shear. Now, Jabal Shear was with the Patriots for 2 seasons. One of those seasons, he actually had 8 sacks, but this is a very consistent player. He's 30 years old, so like the next Nick Williams age, he could be on a 2-year deal like Nick Williams is as well. And again, this is another way the Lions could upgrade. I don't think he has the highest production like Everson Griffin does. He's a consistent 5-sack type of guy, but maybe he could fit in the scheme right away, with everything going on. And he wouldn't be a guy that you have to, try to figure out, like, how can you fit in this defense? So that's another option. There's also Jadeveon Clowney if the Lions want to go and get the top defensive end available. Now, this guy really thrived with J.J. Watt alongside, but when he left J.J. Watt and he was with Seattle, his production went like this. So because of that, I think Lions and every other NFL team after the draft now has the leverage to ask to bring him in for a lot less. He has turned down some big offers. The Lions should not offer this guy tons of money, but they should offer him a solid contract if they wanted to add another defensive end there. There are definitely some options in free agency where the Lions could go. Ziggy Ansah, which I don't think we should bring back, but honestly, how this defense is ran, this nickel formation, not having a lot of defense linemen, this is not a 4-3. This is not a 4-3 defense where we have 4 down linemen. This is a nickel that sometimes has 3, sometimes has only 2. The linebacker group is where we should focus, and really that jack role. And the Lions got a huge upgrade in a pass rusher and Julian Okwara, and the secondary looks a lot better, building it from back to front, which is different than most teams do it. The Lions secondary looks like their strong suit. So the Lions defense is fine in my eyes, and I think they could bring in some veterans like Everson Griffin, like Jadeveon Clowney. If they don't, the Lions still have a really good opportunity to look a lot better with some younger talent that are guys that can fit into the rotation right away, that are going on their way up, not on their way down. So there you go. I think the Lions look fine defensively right now. That was just a quick overview. Let me hear your thoughts, guys. Well, thank you for watching, and I'm out.